And welcome everybody to another episode of AATBirds Weekly Report. Now this one's a little different. We are going to be talking a little bit about the NFC East. And joining me tonight, Roy White III, as you see it there at RW3 with Blogging the Boys, Riled Up Podcast. He was on before, so the cowboy hat. We have seen you before. You don't have the handlebar mustache as you did last time, but
I couldn't hold that up. Not with my wife around, but I did debate the cowboy hat. I didn't even know if you guys would remember little old me, but I appreciate it, brother. And sometimes you do something like that once, and then the only thing worse than a failed bit is a quit on bit. And so I'm not going anywhere. I'm bringing back the hat, even if I couldn't bring back the chops.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And we're going to talk about the NFC East. We're going to get with the Cowboys. To me, I think it's the biggest competition to the Eagles in the division. I know we're gonna have Washington Commanders podcaster on next week, and then the New York Giants. So we'll talk about those two teams. But right here, we're going to dig into the Cowboys because a lot of stuff happened with Dallas this offseason. And if you want to just get in, I'm going to have you start off. Just get into it. Talk about the offseason. See kind of who they lost, who they got, who they gained, and kind of, start a little bit there.
Sure. Well, I guess it started kind of before the season ended, to be honest. That is when you first got to hear rumblings that Amari Cooper might not be a long-term Cowboy. And it all kind of started really because of the COVID stuff. Jerry had made comments that you weren't really putting the team first if you were unwilling to get vaccinated. And Amari was one that was outspoken as to not being that. And sure enough, he wound up having to miss some time as a result of that. And so the Cowboys kind of drew a line in the sand as a result of that. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it all started when, from a fan's perspective, this was a very negative offseason. From a names perspective, from an additions perspective, you can't really say that the Cowboys got better on paper. And that all started with the trading of Amari Cooper. And at the time, the thought was, hey, Amari is overpriced. At $20 million a year, he's earning way too much. And so we've got to offload him for next to nothing. And they did that, right? They got a fifth round pick, and they traded him and a sixth. And in the end, when you saw the contracts that were doled out to wide receivers this offseason, and really all of them coming right after that deal was done, or within a couple of months after that deal was done, it really got fans shaking their heads even more, saying, oh my goodness, what might they have done? Right? So it starts there. And then it continues with the negotiations with Randy Gregory, where you lose a player not because you gave him less money, but because of the verbiage and the language in the contract that you gave him, which was exactly the same as what the team he wound up taking the deal with in the Denver Broncos, right? So they lose those two big key pieces. Then they have to get rid of La'el Collins because they claim cap issues, right? Now, granted, La'el Collins currently not ready to go in Cincinnati, so you can kind of understand their apprehension as to wanting to give him a long-term deal. But at the same time, that's put them in a predicament now along that offensive line. And some would say it forced them into the position they were in April when they took an offensive lineman in the first round, right? But I'll stay on free agency just for a quick minute there. Basically, all of their additions, even by Stephen Jones's verbiage, were guys that they just kept in-house. Leighton Vander Esch, they brought back on a deal. Dorrance Armstrong, they brought back on a deal. Now, they have high hopes for these guys and expect them to contribute more so than they have in the past, right? But to pretend that just bringing these guys back is somehow an addition, that was something that Jerry and the front office tried to sell that Cowboys fans were not buying, right? So you fast forward to the draft in April, you wound up taking Tyler Smith, an offensive lineman, thought to be a bulldozer, right? And a future left tackle in replace of Tyron Smith. But Tyron Smith isn't ready to go anywhere right now, so they're going to slide him in at left guard and hope that he can work there. And based on preseason reports and camp reports so far, he's been serviceable at that position, but it's not really that position that you would be worried about anyway. And quite fairly, you expect your first round draft pick to be able to slide in and start. So Tyler Smith is holding up his end of the bargain as a first rounder. The next two players they took, Sam Williams, the defensive lineman, and the wide receiver, Jalen Tolbert, there in the third round. Again, guys that they have kind of high hopes for and are putting a lot on. Sam Williams is coming into a defense that, in losing Randy Gregory, lost a big name. But we'll kind of get to where I think maybe they are stronger from a depth position in that group. But Sam Williams steps into that role, kind of expected to do something as well as a second-round pick. There's chatter that maybe he could win the spot out of camp because it's undecided. But with that being said, he's still young and still very raw. And then we get a Tolbert, the wide receiver who you would like to give a little time to develop in the NFL. And instead, because of the move you made to offload Amari Cooper, he's now thrust into a position to have to be able to contribute, knowing that Michael Gallup's going to be on the shelf for the first 6 weeks. And, oh, by the way, the guy they signed and tried to convince us would replace him for the first 6 weeks, James Washington, also now will be sidelined, presumably for that entire time that Gallup is also out. So I hope that's a pretty fair recap of kind of their free agency, their draft. Again, from a free agent's perspective, the names that they added weren't really all that significant. They're names you might have heard of. Dante Fowler, if you follow the draft, is a name you've heard of. Is he a name that has ever really produced more than 7 sacks in a season, but one time? Not really, right? And he's on the latter end of his career. These are the types of signings, though, that the Cowboys really get their rocks off on, trying to convince us that, hey, if one of them hits, well, look how great we've done. And to be fair, last year, it wasn't just one that hit. They had a few hit. But they're going to need that to happen again this year if they want to have at least the same type of results within the division. And that's not even speaking to the fact that they should want to expect more than what they accomplished last year.
Yeah, and you kind of hit it perfect. I was going to bring up the question mark of the wide receiver position outside of CeeDee Lamb. You look at CeeDee Lamb, he's their number one guy. And then you have Michael Gallup, who signed a contract. Now, he tore his ACL late in the year, last year. And you lose Cedric Wilson as well, who was a player that was kind of on the rise a little bit, playing really well. They were able to develop him at a Boise State rookie a couple years. Was on the team, developed him at a Boise State. And it's just what you said, James Washington, a veteran they brought in from the Steelers, and he gets hurt. He's going to be out multiple weeks with an injury. Michael Gallup's going to start up. He's on the PUP list. He may miss the first few weeks of the season. Having Tolbert have to jump right in and not kind of ease his way into the rotation there, I think that's pretty big, because if you look at the depth behind now, I don't know how you feel on it. You're a little more plugged in, but I do feel that a veteran receiver is kind of needed on this team. I know you have Simi Fehoko. I know they're high on that guy from Stanford, a second-year guy, I believe, out of Stanford, a 5th-round draft pick. They have Noah Brown.
Pretty deep, to be honest. Like, I think perhaps he's made a little bit of buzz lately, but I mean, you got to remember with these Cowboys wide receivers, like, we've heard a lot of names make buzz in training camp, right? And then they line up in a regular season game and they're unable to duplicate that. And there's a slew of Cowboys receivers that I can go to in the past that have done that. The loss of Cedric Wilson, I kind of look at Cedric Wilson as the first wide receiver that Dak may have gotten paid, like, that maybe looked a little bit better than he was perhaps, and got him a bigger deal than maybe what his numbers suggest he should have. But with that being said, they're going to feel that loss, and they haven't yet found the answer in camp. Like, there's a lot of talk, right? But it's just talking up guys. I mean, there's an undrafted player by the name of Dennis Houston, a second-year player who they're, running with the ones and was getting buzz 1 week. There was a guy, a second-year player by the name of TJ Vasher, who was also getting some buzz, right? Like they all kind of take their turns. Semi Fehoko has been the one recently. He kind of was highlighted because of the highlight catch he had against Trayvon Diggs, right? Kind of forced Trayvon off of social media entirely, some people think. That was a fun time. No, but like the wide receiving group has a lot of questions, right? And they don't have a lot of answers. Now, could they benefit from a veteran wide receiver? Absolutely. Is there one out there on the free agent market that they feel comfortable with? I don't think so, because I think Steven's looking at it like, and when I say Steven, I really am talking about the Cowboys front office, but I think they're looking at it from the standpoint of, let's see what we have through 2 preseason games. And when other teams have to make cuts, we'll see if there's a veteran wide receiver that winds up being out there that can jump into camp, that's already ready to run and can slide into that number 2 spot, right? And I'm just speculating a little bit there because they have said plainly right now they're not looking outside the building. But I think that's kind of the way they're going to play it, because they've still got plenty of powder, as Steven always loves to refer to his cap space as powder, dry powder. And that one, at some point, like, it's use it or lose it. Yes, you can roll a little bit of it over into next year, but to pretend they should do that doesn't sell well to the fan base. Doesn't sell well.
So, you're talking about, this team, this roster as a whole, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard. I know there was a little bit back and forth last year. A lot of people liking what Pollard was doing, and Zeke saying that he kind of lost it a little bit. Now, there's talk that Zeke is in probably the best shape that he's been in a long time. What are the talks about the running back situation in camp right now?
Man, they're not talking about what they should be, to be honest with you. If the media was forward thinking about it and smart about it, we would be having conversations right now about extending Tony Pollard. Because right now you could potentially offer him more than what it would suggest he's worth on the open market. Maybe 3 years, 25, 3 years, 26, right? And that would look like an overpayment. But when you realize that payment allows you to get out of the Zeke deal next season scot-free, that's a deal you're willing to make 10 times out of 10. And Cowboys fans, I think, should be willing to make. Now, the talk right now is it still going to be about 60-40? Are we going to see more 2-back sets on the field with both of them getting on the field? And it's a nice wrinkle to have, but let's face it, it's really kind of a matchups-based thing. I mean, if a defense can key in on the fact that you have Zeke and Tony out there, and every time Tony runs out wide or motions out, he's going to be running a route, right? Well, he's kind of got to be better than a wide receiver to do that route to make it worth your time. Yes, he's going to catch a few more passes. Yes, I think he's dangerous. And yes, Zeke looks the part. And it should be remembered with Zeke, right? Like, in fairness to him, he toughed out the season last year after basically partially tearing his knee in like week 4. And if you look at the games before that, all of those games, he was running well, averaging more than 4 yards a carry. I think he had more than 70 yards in each of those games, including a 140-yard effort. But after he hurt his knee, he did not have a game in which he rushed more than 70 yards. And that was like 12 games. So on the season, it looked pretty bad. And it was pretty bad. Like, Tony Pollard was the better back and should have gotten a lot more work last season than he did. And that's why, yeah, that position is extremely interesting as to how they're going to play it, because they can give the lip service all day about Tony Pollard needing to get touches or about it being even a meritocracy. But don't ever let anybody tell you that the Jones boys don't have some say when it comes to the guys that are getting paid also taking a certain number of snaps. Like, it's not dictated in that way, but when guys are getting paid by the Joneses expect them to be out on the field a majority of the time.
Yeah, and also they want to make their investment look like a good investment. They don't want to have somebody on the field and then pull them off and say, you know what, maybe he should only play half the snaps and split the snaps. But they want to make sure that if they're investing a lot into a player, they need to be on the field. They need to be producing.
Dude, I hate saying it. I hate saying that, like, Tony Pollard's never been in the top 5 in jersey sales. You know what I mean? But that's like the type of crap that we have to consider as Cowboys fans. That's the type of crap we have to put up with.
So let's try and consider this. Do you think, looking at the Cowboys roster, looking at the moves they made and moves they didn't make or players let go and all that, and then you go to the side and look at the Philadelphia Eagles and the moves that they made and what they did this offseason, do you think that the talent gap and basically it's kind of neck and neck now between the two teams? Or has one team kind of leaped the other, or is it still the same?
The gap has narrowed. I can confidently say the gap has narrowed. Now, has it gotten to the point where the Eagles have swung past the Cowboys from a pendulum standpoint? I don't know if they're there yet, because I don't have all the answers I need on Jalen Hurts, quite honestly. And, you know, I think that was a question you guys were asking when we talked about this a year ago. And I would imagine that you haven't seen enough yet even to convince you otherwise, to convince you really one way or the other. I don't know if you're convinced he doesn't have it, but I doubt you're convinced he does. And this is the perfect season to find out. If ever there was a time, as I'm looking at, you know, the Eagles, hey, the addition of A.J. Brown, you know what the tight ends have always done in that offense. Devontae Smith with another year under his belt. It seems like all the opportunities are there. Miles Sanders, if he can stay healthy, right, in the backfield, you guys have weapons to surround Jalen Hurts with. And, you know, you have the offensive line to protect him, which I think is a key component that is often forgotten about, dismissed. Like, Dak looks like dog crap when he doesn't have an offensive line that can protect him. So I think you have all the things there to maybe make a final decision on Jalen Hurts. But when it comes to the comparing of the two, right, the Cowboys defense, I think, could potentially be better this year than it was on paper last year. Even though they won't get as many turnovers, it's almost a certainty. Like, there were games when they did not play even average football either.
Okay. Yeah, and the way that I put it, like for me, Jalen Hurts, the guy, he just turned 24 years old a couple of days ago. So it's not like he's 26, 27 years old, you know, in his couple, because there's quarterbacks drafted this year in this year's draft that were older than he is now, which is pretty crazy. And I just feel having him in this system, second year, the first time he's been in a system for 2 straight seasons, I think probably since maybe high school, even before that. So wow. It's been a very long time with all the different offensive coordinators he's had, all the different things that he's been going through and what he did going from Alabama to Oklahoma, getting drafted in the second round, all of a sudden then at the end of the season playing for a team that had a franchise quarterback. A lot of people thought that wind up playing down and just basically regressing and no longer with the team. Then he goes to another team and then he's now on another team. Now he's back in the NFC East, but I just think Jalen Hurts and what he can do, and his legs are going to be a factor. It's going to be, and everyone talks about his arm strength and all that. A lot of it is a timing aspect. Drew Brees didn't have the strongest arm, but he was very good timing. It's about timing. And that's a lot of it is with, you know, the offense and everything like that. Because not every quarterback's going to have a super strong arm. You're not going to have a Josh Allen type arm or a Patrick Mahomes type arm. It's just not going to happen that way. But to me, it's just, you look at this offense, they can run the ball. They have the offensive line, like you said, and it's about, and it's with all the teams in this division too. It's also about staying healthy, because when you're not healthy, you start digging into that depth that you think you have, and then you wind up not having it anymore. And I feel like the Eagles did overachieve last year, going 9-8 and making the playoffs. But they exponentially got better this year. It's just My thing is with this, rivalry between the two teams, these two teams, I feel like these are the two top teams in the division fighting it out. The Eagles are going to have to beat the Cowboys because I don't count the last game last year because they just sat everybody. It was almost like a bona fide preseason game.
Mhm.
But again, 2 years, if you look at the past couple of seasons, they lost big time first couple of weeks of the season. One of those games they lost handily. And
There's a
then
risk of a mental, like there's a risk of developing a mental block here. Like we're on the cusp
Mhm.
of that. But I'm trying to also caution Cowboys fans to not necessarily be as like dismissive of the NFC East as they have been, right? And it's being fueled by the talking heads out there calling the division the worst division in football. Like I
I wouldn't
understand
say
it.
that now.
Well, yeah, I understand it coming off the season that it was, and I wouldn't necessarily say
Yeah.
that for this season, but I understand it coming off the season that it was. But for the teams that are in the division, and specifically the Cowboys, like you look around, every single team in the division got better.
Yeah.
I think, right? And then you can say that about the Commanders, and you can say that even about the Giants, even though I don't think either of them took a leap high enough to compete with where the Cowboys and the Eagles likely are. I think they all got better. So the Cowboys need to be a little bit cautious when they approach these games and when they approach these teams because it could burn them. Like they've had an easy go of it a little bit. They got to play Jake Fromm and they got to play Glennon for the Giants last year, and they're now licking their chops. We're all licking our chops at the idea of playing Carson Wentz for some reason, but the last time he was in the NFC East, he wasn't terrible. So it does make me think about it. What is your reaction, by the way, in Philly? I'm curious about that. Are you guys like can't wait to stick it to Carson Wentz, or does it make you sad?
So I'm going to throw this up for you because it was something I'll bring up at the end because it's a little. Let me pull it up here. This will kind of give you the answer. Ultimate bus trip to Fedex Field. We're coming for you, Carson.
Okay, I saw that.
So
I saw this thing. That's awesome.
So we, along with a couple other podcasts, a couple other people, Philly Sports Trips is sponsoring it. September 25th. There is a link in the description. You can get your tickets. Join us.
What a promo! You didn't even set me up for that. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, you helped me set it up basically. But yeah, that's kind of our feeling. It's just, don't get me wrong. I know what Carson Wentz can do, but I just feel in watching him after the injury, coming back in 2018, then he goes out. Nick Foles comes back and leads them in the playoffs again. Then in 2019, he, that last couple games of the season gets them into the playoffs, then gets hurt. But then you look at 2020, it's just he tries to play hero ball all the time, and he has lost a step. He's not as you look at that 2017 season and everything that kind of fell right for them, and just the way the offense was, the way they had getting the playmakers, Alshon Jeffrey, and getting Torrey Smith and Jay Ajayi and having LeGarrette Blount and having all these players, everything fell right. Every free agent that they signed hit. And you're not going to have that again. And, Carson Wentz slowly just kind of regressed and didn't get better. And I don't know how his mental state was in terms of how his, how he prepared and how he was in the locker room. There's different stories that go around, stuff like that. But I just feel
you telling me he needed a study clause?
Yeah. Well, he didn't need that, but they at least didn't announce the study clause. But yeah, I just for me, it's just they gave him the big contract, and it's it was warranted from what he did in 2017. He had that big jump after the rookie season, and I think a lot in what I look at when I watch the Buffalo Bills and when I watch Josh Allen, I could see myself. I think of it a lot, saying if Carson Wentz never got hurt, could he have kind of been what Josh Allen is right now, and what he's doing in the NFL? Because I think that injury that Carson had was a whole heck of a lot worse than what kind of is reported. I feel like it was very, very bad with the way he was hit and the way he was pinned, and the way his leg was pinned. It was just, to me, I just think it was a lot worse. And to me, I can see it on the field just watching him. He's not the same player. And but going to Washington has some weapons. They have a pretty good defense, but playing on that turf, that field's terrible. And there's so many injuries that happen with that crap grass and that turf, and he's got some bad knees. So
Yeah.
we don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes me think of the RG3 days when you
yeah,
would just feel terrible if he took
and,
off on that field.
and
But
and
you're
that's
absolutely
why I
right.
said that.
No, we can
That's why.
relate to the injury stuff holding guys back, though, more so than they let on. Because, like Dak, to an extent, last season, nursing that, the hamstring injury that he was coming off of, or the calf injury, rather, that
Yeah.
he was coming off of and had, it had an effect on him. Make no mistake. It had an effect on him, both mentally and I think physically it played a role in the way that he threw the football. So hopefully, he's taken a step mentally beyond that to where now he's no longer even considering what is going to happen to his ankle or what is going to happen to his calf from play to play. Because if he is, like, that's where Dak's game can be taken to another level. Like, it's inside the 20s, that ability to escape pressure and still, score, like, get it into the end zone. Like, as a bigger body, I mean, he's built, as big as some linebackers are. So he's not an easy guy to bring down, but he's not particularly fast either, right? Like he's shifty in that way though. So like he can be elusive back there. So I'd like to see him engage a little bit more with his legs this season. And I'm hoping that, just like Jalen, like every quarterback always has their questions to answer. Now they're varying degrees of questions, right? But
Yeah.
Jalen's questions are the questions that Dak had to answer a couple years ago, right? Are you worth the next big contract?
Yeah.
Now
It's coming
we're
up.
on to another set of questions for Dak Prescott, which are, now that you're the guy making the big money, we're almost forced to do what we're doing with the wide receivers, and you've got to make the difference, right? I said Cedric was the guy that he kind of got paid, but he's going to have to get several other guys paid if he wants to stay the Dallas Cowboys quarterback for his career, right? Because Aaron Rodgers gets a Devontae Adams only for so long. Patrick Mahomes gets a Tyreek Hill only for so long, right? Because when they get too good, they got to go, and it's time for the team to put it on the shoulders of the quarterback to make the difference. Like they're putting that on him this year to do that, right? That's the questions they're asking Dak to answer is, okay, you have CeeDee. One guy we haven't mentioned, though, that I will say in the passing game cannot be overlooked, Dalton Schultz. Like, he is still – and he may catch 90 balls this year.
And hey, I hope he does because he is on my dynasty fantasy team. So.
Hey, that's a smart pick. In fact, like fantasy players out there, Dalton Schultz, where he will be drafted from a tight end's perspective, he won't be amongst those top tier guys, right? He won't be a Kelsey, a Kittle, a Mark Andrews, right? He may not even be like a Pitts, a Hawkinson, right? But right in that group. And I believe he will be a guy that produces significantly for this season because, again, if CeeDee's going to get all that attention, Dak loves his like pressure release valve. He always has since he was a rookie. He had no problem throwing to the tight end, and he's kind of made, if any guy is next to be getting paid, that's maybe the next guy that should raise his hand and say, thank you, Dak.
Because he's playing on the franchise tag, correct?
Yeah. Not only is he playing on the franchise tag, but when you do the math on it, man,
a lot of money.
If the Cowboys are smart, they will franchise tag him 2 years in a row. Because right now, according to free agent numbers, he would garner like a 5-year, $14 or $15 million per deal. And if you tag him, you're already tagging him this year. That's done. But if you tag him next year, even with the extra 20% tacked on, he's still going to only make an average over the next 2 seasons of like 13 million.
Oh.
So you're actually paying him less to do this year-to-year thing. And then, quite frankly, by that time, I mean, they expect to be able to let him go. Now, I don't know necessarily if they're going to tag him next season because they may want to use that in another area, right? Although I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that I would use that on other than him. But even still, if they do wind up using it on him, they will not re-sign him past that because they drafted Jake Ferguson this year. Has been injured all camp, so hasn't really had a chance to like get out there and show what he's capable of. But I mean, he's basically Dalton Schultz 2.0, drafted beyond the third round, might sit for a year and then develop for another year. And by year 3, that's when Schultz kind of came on and became what he is or what he has become.
Yeah, and I got 2 questions for you before I hit the final one. Final question. The one question here, it's Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, both had very, very good seasons last year. Which one of the 2 do you think could duplicate?
That was understated, sir. I'm going to have to have you maybe amend the way you said that. Historic seasons, record-breaking seasons.
Which one do you think could duplicate their 2021 season?
Oh, it's 100%. I mean, the only one that could is Micah because Trayvon ain't. It's virtually impossible. I think Trayvon Diggs had as many interceptions as been had in like the last decade, a season ago. So he is not replicating that. Now, could Trayvon Diggs, like from a pro football focus grade standpoint, be a better cornerback in 2022? I absolutely believe he could, but he won't have nearly the interceptions. Now, Micah put up an incredible season, right? He put up a high bar when he basically came into the league and as a rookie was, if not the best pass rusher in the league, amongst the top 3. And to think he could perform better next season with more attention, it's, again, a high bar. But you know what, dude? This kid has made me believe. I believe he can, and I believe he will. And if I were a betting man, if there was something to bet on in this department, whether it's sack numbers, whether it's pressures, whether it's tackles for loss, shoot, even turnovers, I'll bet he probably gets a few more than he did last season. Like, I truly believe this kid, the sky is the limit. Like, I don't know if we can realistically put a cap on what he's capable of yet.
And, I watched him play at Penn State, so I know what he can do all over the field there as well. And it's just, maybe I don't want to see him do that well with the Cowboys, but again, he's still, Penn State alum.
I would hate it too. I would hate seeing it if it was in Philly. That's for damn sure, man.
Hey, but, I always have to, it is an Nittany line. Saquon Barkley plays for the Giants, and unfortunately he's been hurt the last couple of seasons, but again, I like to see players from the college that I like to watch and my favorite team to kind of succeed in the pros. Their players, move on and see them grow and stuff like that. But the next question I have kind of goes as a realm of the conference, talking about the conference. In my eyes, the conference has taken a little bit of a hit in terms of the strength at the top and the amount of teams at the top. Yes, Tom Brady comes back after retiring, being home, figuring out I don't want to be home because I'm getting yelled at too much. I have to do chores. I have all this stuff to do. I'd rather just go and play football.
Every married man in the world knew that was coming.
Exactly. That's why the best when he came back, all the memes came out with him and everything. But Russell Wilson no longer with the Seattle Seahawks, even though they did struggle last year. But again, he's a top quarterback that moves onto the AFC, which AFC is a absolute stacked conference. But you're looking at
that division in the AFC West. I would not want any part of that, dude.
No, not at all. Not at all. And in my opinion, looking at this conference, Jimmy Garoppolo, is he the quarterback? Is he not the quarterback? Where is he going? They have Trey Lance. You have Kyler Murray with whatever in Arizona. They lost They have DeAndre Hopkins is going to be suspended the first 6 games. You're looking at the other divisions. I think Minnesota is going to be a sleeper team. They still have a good offense. Aaron Rodgers, a whole bunch of new weapons, but they still have a good defense. But what else do you really have? The Saints, what are the Saints? Carolina gets Baker Mayfield. They have Baker and Darnold, and they don't know what they're
it's
doing.
Tampa and a bunch of teams. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's the
I'll throw Green Bay there. I'll throw Green Bay there just because of Aaron Rodgers. But
yeah, only because of Aaron Rodgers, right? Because the rest of it is absolutely like non-threatening, right? It's the Tampa Brady's and whoever else like you want to throw in there. Now, I guess you could, and you probably should, give the Rams their respect, right? They are the reigning Super Bowl champions, but at the same time, like heading into the playoffs last year, they were no one's pick to go and win it all. Much less come out of the NFC and represent it. And so you could see them being overtaken. And you're right. Like, the whole conference has taken a step back, whether it's Russell Wilson leaving or Devontae Adams and, Aaron Rodgers' biggest weapon now being gone. It's a conference that like 6 or 7 teams should feel like they can win.
Yeah, and I understand the Rams. I understand they have a lot of talent, but again, they did get a year older, and the whole Matt Stafford thing kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know. I guess it's not too serious. He's dealing with some stuff there, health-wise, injury-wise, but I don't know. I know what they did last year was great. That's all well and good. McVay's a very good.
I believe in McVay. I believe in McVay. I think he's one of the few coaches in the NFL that actually does make a tangible difference.
He knows what he's doing. He's a heck of a coach. And I think, I'll throw those 3 teams: Tampa, Rams, and the Packers. Those are three teams that are there. And then the teams that are below them, they're not that far below them. And the one thing is, looking at Tampa Bay, they lose Ryan Jensen. He got hurt, the center, basically your quarterback, your offensive line. And then today, I know Russell Gage got hurt, and then the backup center, I believe, Robert Hainsey, he got hurt as well. I don't know if he's the backup to Jensen. If he is, that's an even bigger issue, because then now you lost another center. I'm not sure how serious it is with those 2 injuries, and don't give me this, they got Julio Jones because he's a shell of his former self. It's like Randy Moss going to play for the Titans. Yeah, it's a name, but it's not. Yeah, he may do okay, may get a couple catches, couple touchdowns, whatever, but he's not the Julio of old. He'll have a hamstring injury probably by first minute of week 1, running a post route. But I
tend to agree on Julio there. Like, I think he is toast, but they still have weapons in Chris Godwin.
Oh, they do. They do.
Mike Evans, who knows? Gronk says he's done, but he could always suit it up for 1 or 2 games. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't be like that threatened by that, to be honest. But even still, they have an incredibly stout defense, right? Like, their defense is still amongst the best in the conference. And I think they have the most complete team. Like, ultimately, that's kind of what it comes down to. They have the offense, they have the defense, they have the coaching, right? The Rams, I still, I'm not like absolutely sold on Matthew Stafford. He doesn't necessarily scare me, but did he get better weapons when they added Allen Robinson this offseason and let
Robert Woods and OBJ?
Well, they lost Robert Woods for the most of last season, though, right? Like, Robert Woods tore his ACL, and they did just fine kind of without him. Yeah, they added OBJ to replace him, and they lost him. But again, like, I think Allen Robinson is a better version of both of those, and he gives them more of what they probably needed to complement Cooper Kupp, right? Like, Odell does a little bit of the same things that Cooper Kupp does, both possession-wise, and doesn't have that, like, deep burner impact that he used to, whereas Allen Robinson is a go up and get it type of guy. I don't know. I still feel I still fear the Rams, or at least respect the Rams a little bit, to the point that, like, I would say, are they better than the Cowboys? I think so, right? Like, are the Bucks better than the Cowboys? I think so. Are the Packers better than the Cowboys? I don't think so, but I know their quarterback is, and he's like enough, as you mentioned, to kind of do it to anybody on any given Sunday.
Until they get in the playoffs.
Yeah, until they get in the playoffs, right? Then his defense is going to have to come along because he still plays in Green Bay. And the most backwards ass thing of his career will be the fact that for his entire career, he played for the benefit to play in the worst possible conditions he could have as a quarterback to try to win a football game, right? Like every year, Aaron Rodgers' reward for winning a bunch of football games is to go play in the worst conditions like available in Lambeau in December and January. I mean, way to go, man.
Yeah, no, you're right there. And how I'm going to end this, I'm going to give you a question. I'm not sure how you're going to answer it. I don't know if you want to answer it, but this division.
Fearlessly.
Give us first, second, third, fourth in this division. Your prediction. I won't have you do records. Just do first, second, third, fourth. Makes it easier.
Cowboys, Eagles, Commanders, Giants. Like I believe in Daniel Jones the least. Like I still think the Giants.
How many
are
playoff teams though out of the division? One or two?
Two.
Okay.
I think the Cowboys and the Eagles will be in there. I do think they're both good enough. And again, like look at the teams. You just named them all in the NFC East or in the entire NFC. Like, okay, throw the Cardinals in there if you want to give Kyler Murray like the benefit of the doubt. But Trey Lance is going to have a learning curve. Yeah, I like Deebo Samuel. Yeah, I like the weapons he has, but Trey Lance is unproven. And quite honestly, if he had it, there's no way in hell he wouldn't have already beat out Jimmy Garoppolo last year, right? Like, I'm not saying he can't develop into that. I just don't think he'll necessarily be ready right away this year to compete for the mantle in the NFC. So, like, I kind of eliminate them. In the NFC South, like the Saints are a non-factor now that Drew Brees and Sean Payton have gone there. A completely different team, a completely different franchise, right? Completely different direction. The Carolina Panthers, they're in transition. They can't figure it out at quarterback. Matt Rule's hanging on by a thread to save his job, right? I mean, Arizona, like I give Arizona their props, but yeah, Seattle, like they're not going to be anything worth a crap. Minnesota, I think, is the only other team that you mentioned that I wanted to come back to because I say about Minnesota, yes, they do have a good offense, like a respectable offense on paper, but when have they ever put it all together? Quite frankly, their defense winds up more often than not letting them down in a division where they should be running over the other two teams in the Bears and the Lions, but they inevitably lose a game or two to those teams or two, and they put themselves behind the eight ball. So, like, I think Minnesota will find themselves in that same position again, as they always kind of do, coming up a little bit too short. A Kirk Cousins, losing 4 or 5 type of run does them in. And the Bears and Lions, like, do we even need to have that conversation? What needs to be said? Hard Knocks was fun last night. I'll say that about Dan Campbell and the Lions.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. That's, he's, to me, it's great. What kind of, I love what he says and the different type of sayings and the quotes he gives and everything. And, he's the type of coach that you would want to play for. And does that help them win games? I don't know that they did lose a good number of close games last year. But again, that's all part of it.
I think he's a good coach for a turnaround. Like, he's a good coach for a turnaround because someone needs to deliver this like over the top messaging that like smacks everybody into gear and like gets everything pulling in the right direction. Yeah. But, can he keep this up and can the message still hit like after 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
The answer is no. I don't think.
I think it starts to get stale,
even if they have
you're not winning.
Like, I don't think he'll be able to keep that up for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, you can't lose and keep coming up with the same thing because it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, nothing works when you lose, though. Like, in fairness, right? Like, I mean, if you could be, Mike Singletary, you could be you could be whomever you want to name. I didn't mean to throw his name out there out of nothing, but I just think of like a guy who was like very serious. Wasn't hokey at all, but like had kind of sayings that wasn't as quite bro as Dan Campbell is. And yet, like, the messaging doesn't get through if you don't win football games.
Exactly. It's like going to the cabinet and getting the stale bread out, putting it back and keep coming back to it. It's still going to be stale and eventually it's going to be moldy and you throw it away. So eventually you can use that if you'd like.
Let's do it.
But, it's just hopefully he does well. Hopefully week 1 he loses because that's who the Eagles play. And then he can win a game or 2 or 5 or 6, whatever after that. But no, it's just, good for them. Hopefully they have a little bit of a better season. But with this, the way the NFC East is for our teams in the division and for the rest of the teams, this was the first episode of Eye in the East. Thank you for joining me, Roy.
Where are you ranking them, by the way? I want to hear your rankings. You got the Eagles on top. You put them on. You put them in the captain's chair. You put them in the driver's seat.
I don't know yet. I can't make those rankings yet. Our show that we do that's on the 20. No, that's on the 31st. Okay. We do our big prediction show.
I'm gonna put that in my calendar. Then I'll be tweeting you then.
That's fine. Sure I will let you know once I get all my watching and analyzing down. I'll have that for you. But let everyone know where they can find you and what you kind of have, in store.
Oh, thanks. So you can hit me up on Twitter at RW3. It's pretty much my only social media platform. Like, I did the Instagram for a little bit. Like, I know it's super happy and cool and seems great. Just can't ever be consistent with it. So you can find me on Twitter. You can follow me, Blogging the Boys. Do a podcast for them. That's where you can find Riled Up. Yeah, company man here. Blogging the Boys every Thursday. You can hit up the pod with my buddy Tom Ryle. And then, I'll put some content up as well on YouTube from time to time. Every now and then, you can find that at Roy's World there on YouTube. And, yeah, man, hit up the Blogging the Boys page. We'll do that podcast. And we also got YouTube instant reaction shows for the games, as well as a podcast every Tuesday night that we do live on YouTube also. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on and, talking about this division. And, it's always good to start out with the Cowboys. But, just run down a couple of things that we have here in store in types of our sponsors. Statement Games, fun, free twist on fantasy sports. You can check them in the bio. We have Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant. Check them out, www.vinnyspizzapa.com. Tell them we sent you. Also, Stuff to the Grills. You can check them out as well, www.stufftothegrills.com. So just checked all that out we got going on here. I do want to bring up, we have our Eagles post-game show at Sports and Social in Allentown with Hollis Thomas, former Eagle Hollis Thomas. We have him coming with us, being a guest host for the show. So another fun thing that we have in store that we are doing. It'll be after the second preseason game, talk a little bit about the game or also talk about the season and, just seeing what we've seen so far with training camp in the preseason and kind of starting to break it down because the season will be right around the corner at that point. And it's kind of what we have with all about the birds and everything we have there. And we have tons of shows on. Chip does his show on Mondays. We have Jeff and Peanut do their Birds, Beers, and BS on Fridays, YouTube exclusive only. We have our show on Wednesday night. We will be doing next Wednesday night with the Washington Commanders, breaking them down, seeing how they've gotten better. But
I gotta tell you, man, it's a damn shame that you guys do this for such a crummy team because the production value of this program is really top notch, man. I got to give it to you. You do a damn good job.
We appreciate it.
So sorry that it's got to be for the Eagles,
Well, yeah, I know. I could always do it for my favorite baseball team, which is the Seattle Mariners. I'm sure you'd enjoy that too.
Hey, I am a baseball fan, man. Come find me. I'm a Mets fan, though, so we can commiserate together, you and me as a Mariner guy.
That's okay.
Been a while for both of us.
Exactly. So, with that, I will leave it. You don't have to say it because I know you won't say it. But the way we always end every show is a very happy and cheerful Go Birds.
So.